Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and look at exactly why selective participation is the absolute highest skill discipline in trading. If you've ever wondered why the professionals consistently pull capital from the markets while doing seemingly a fraction of the work, well, the answer isn't some secret indicator, it's actually a clinical, deeply structured approach to exactly when they choose to engage. So today, we're going to break down the exact behavioral architecture that separates the struggling amateur from the funded institutional operator. But first, I want you to place yourself in that exact moment of pain right now. You know the one. You're sitting at your desk, the glow of the monitors is practically burning into your eyes. You're constantly scanning the charts, flipping between timeframes, desperately looking for a setup. There's this heavy, tight feeling in your chest, the feeling that every single 1-minute candle that moves without you is a massive opportunity you're missing out on. You click, you enter, you get stopped out, and the whole cycle just repeats. Let that feeling sit for a moment. You literally feel the exhaustion of trying to catch every single move, trapped in this neurochemical loop that you've cleverly disguised as a strategy problem. You keep telling yourself you just need a better entry model, right? Or maybe a tighter stop loss. But here is the stark reality. The instinct to participate constantly is, without a doubt, the most expensive habit in trading. It's exactly what drains your account while you genuinely think you're working hard. So, at the peak of all that frustration, here is a clinical reality that changes absolutely everything. Consider this a pattern interruption. Your real problem? It's dopamine. Fun fact, your brain actually releases more dopamine in the anticipation of a reward than when you actually get it. That's why dopamine fires on the near miss, on the potential of the trade, not the actual outcome. Discipline over dopamine means recognizing when your brain is simply seeking neurochemical stimulation and actively choosing your structural edge over the chemical reward of just clicking the mouse. Now, what's super interesting about this is how it totally reframes overtrading. It's not a lack of technical skill, it's a biological response that separates retail urgency from institutional restraint. The retail mind is completely hijacked by anticipatory dopamine. It feels an urge, a massive fear of missing out, and it acts on it immediately. The institutional operator, on the other hand, operates with restraint. They rely on structure and outcome focus and waiting for absolute alignment. They recognize the exact same urge, but they deliberately do not immediately obey it. So to solve this behavioral trap, we're going to walk through 4 key frameworks today: selectivity versus frequency, the illusion of action, session completion, and finally, the identity shift. All right, let's jump into section 1, selectivity versus frequency. We'll see how the math actually proves that doing less preserves your edge. If you compare 2 traders who possess the exact same edge, you are going to see completely different results based purely on their frequency of participation. Look at the high-frequency trader. They execute on every minor setup, entirely driven by dopamine, and the inevitable outcome is absolute emotional degradation. Now contrast that with the selective operator. They only execute during precise A-plus time windows. Their outcome isn't just financial profit, it's capital and mental clarity beautifully preserved for the next session. So, here is the crucial point. Professional operators actually quantify this selectivity. They require a minimum pre-trade score of 45 out of 70 just to justify participating in an A-plus window. This score factors in things like session timing, liquidity interaction, displacement quality, and, crucially, an emotional neutrality score of at least 7 out of 10. If the environment doesn't score a 45 or if your emotions are compromised, the trade is mathematically invalid. It's a no-go. Moving on to section 2, the illusion of action. Here's where we reframe patience as the active protection of your edge. Why does sitting in front of a chart and doing absolutely nothing feel so agonizing? Well, it's because our brains naturally equate physical action with progress. If you're typing, clicking, or analyzing, you feel productive, right? But trading completely inverts this biological wiring. Sitting on your hands during a 12-minute accumulation phase while a setup forms is significantly harder than just entering the market blindly. You have to actively reframe your patience. You have to realize that doing nothing is not laziness. Doing nothing is actually a high-skill activity. And honestly, this requires mechanical rules to protect you from yourself. This rule exists because a 12 to 20-minute manipulation stopout is your absolute highest risk for a dopamine-driven revenge trade. When you take a loss, your cortisol spikes, and your brain immediately demands a dopamine hit to recover that lost feeling of safety. So you absolutely must mandate a 20-minute cooling period. No charts, no analysis. The stopout is just information, and you have to allow the event to be fully complete. Okay, section 3, the session completion framework.
This is all about knowing exactly when the day is done.
This right here is the thesis completion hierarchy, and the rule is simple. You must stop trading the second the first condition is met. Whether a failure swing is cleared, a 4-hour or 7-hour fair value gap is reached, a 15-minute gap is filled, or you hit that London range extreme. If your algorithmic target is reached, or you've secured a 50-point minimum and the environment drops below A+, you are done. The goal isn't to squeeze every last drop out of the market. The goal is to execute your thesis and then actively protect your psychological capital by simply walking away.
Which leads us directly into account protection rules. Look, survival is the absolute most important thing. A $500 personal daily limit means the session ends right there, keeping your capital safe long before you ever hit a firm's hard limit. 2 losses, stop trading entirely. At 12 p.m. Eastern, it's a hard close. All positions are closed. And if your emotional state drops below a 7 out of 10, you do not trade, period. If you destroy your mental state by forcing setups, you're simply losing in slow motion, even if you're sitting on a fully funded account.
Finally, Section 4, the identity shift, moving from retail compulsion to institutional selectivity. The ultimate behavioral transition really happens right here. The retail mindset asks out of pure urgency, how many trades can I find today? But the institutional operator, they ask from a place of abundance. Does this specific environment deserve my selective participation? It changes absolutely everything when you realize you can feel emotional impulses, the urge to jump in, that fear of missing out, without immediately obeying them. As the framework clearly states, patience creates precision. Only timing survives the noise. You are building consistency of self here, not perfection of prediction. You really have to understand that the strategy you built is just the map, but the live market is the territory. When the territory changes, sure, you update the map, but you never, ever abandon your disciplined execution. So, I want you to project yourself forward to your very next session. See yourself operating as this incredibly calm operator. You sit down, you wait for your specific timing window, you execute precisely, your thesis completes, and then you simply close the platform. You walk away from the screens without hesitation because the session is done. You experience yourself as a trader who truly understands that we trade to live, we do not live to trade. Remember the progression here? Survival leads to risk control, which leads to process, which ultimately leads to profit. Protect your mental capital just as fiercely as your financial capital. Tomorrow morning when the bell rings, who's going to be sitting at your desk? The dopamine addict or the clinical operator? The market always offers trades. Your edge does not. Session Trading Lab.